What's up, everyone? This is Tatum. I'm back with another episode of Off the Wall, where today I'm going to be discussing probably one of the most impactful albums in music history, probably one of the biggest albums in music history. Today, without further ado, I'm going to be discussing the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. Man, this album is probably just the cover. Let me just start with the cover. The cover is probably one of the most iconic covers of all time. I think it's the Beatles' best cover they ever had. I think it's just dope that they have all their favorite people on the album cover. Have the Beatles there, like because it's the funeral of the Beatles, and like they're sitting there sobbing next to it, which is supposed to be Sgt. Pepper. I just think that was dope, and it's one of the first albums to have the lyrics on the back of the album as well, and it's probably needed for an album like this that's probably so conspiracy theorists talks and speculated about. I just think it's so fucking dope. So with that being said, I'm gonna put this down and I'm gonna get into it. All right. So Sgt. Pepper is the Beatles' eighth album, which is freaking insane because for it to be anybody who's on their eighth album, you're probably not even that into them anymore. But the Beatles like hit their pinnacle like at the eighth album, and it's the first time they actually became an official studio band. They felt like the shows were becoming less about the band and music themselves and more rather about just the sensationalized of the Beatles. And around this time they had talks of separation and the Beatles breaking up after Revolver, which is probably to the point where their most forward pushing albums. They've been around each other most of their lives. So they probably just wanted to grow off and do things on their own, and they were learning through things about life and things of that nature. So like I think even George Harrison left the band for a spell, but came back obviously. So I thought it was pretty cool. It starts with, and the whole idea of Sgt. Pepper was Paul's ideas, and it was just the idea of that, we kind of ran the course with the Beatles. Let's become a whole new band, for lack of better words, and they. But that idea going into this album, that's why like the album had no limitations. It's probably one of the most progressive pop albums, rock albums you probably would ever hear, and it broke the mold in a lot of ways. So I thought that was pretty dope. So the album starts with the Sgt. Pepper intro, and it's like a welcome. It sounds like they're at a show and things of that nature, which shows you how creative they were being. It sounds like they're at a show, and welcome Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. So it was like a welcoming, and then to go into with a little help from my friends, and it kind of cools down and you hear the crowd, and then the transition just amazing from the intro until with a little help from my friends. And that's probably my favorite Ringo song as a Beatle. Like if you've been looking at my reviews from the White Album to Revolver, it's to Abbey Road, I always have like a little knock to Ringo just because his voice is just not for me like that, and some of his songs just come off as kiddish in a way. But this song is probably my favorite. I know he gets a lot of flack for his vocals and things of that nature, but this song itself is funny. It's relatable. It's like we all have friends that we enjoy being around, and I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends, and I think it's dope that all of them are on the song, like singing behind him in like a joyous friendship moment of the Beatles, which is probably the last time, because after this it was the White Album, and amazing Beatle album, probably my favorite Beatle album, but you could tell as a band they just wasn't on the same page. And like there's some lines in here that's just, like I said, it's just funny. Like, what do you see when you turn out the lights? Like, I don't know, but I'm certain that it's mine. Like him starting off with it with the lines like, what would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me, limit your ears, and I sing you a song and I promise not to sing out of key? Like, that's pretty much everything I summed up with. I always have a problem with Ringo's songs, like just his vocals in a way. So just to address that, and I don't know, that I think it was a great song to start off the album with. Yeah, and then we go into Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and it's probably one of my favorite Lennon records. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and Strawberry Fields Forever, which I wish was on this album, but they released it with Penny Lane earlier because the record company just wanted singles. But Lucy in the Sky and Strawberry Fields Forever are probably the first of the first two Beatles songs I ever heard. Like I remember, I forget the it's like an anthology or greatest hits album when they standing over the rails and things of that nature. One's red and one's blue, but those are one of the first two, and I listened to that song. I was like, "What the hell is this?" Like in my late teens, is like I never heard anything like this, and that was 2007, 2008. So it's like that made me go listen to Sergeant Pepper. Like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds made me go listen to Sergeant Pepper, and it's probably John's best song on the album because it sounds like this is obviously, if you listen to it and you know the backstory, this is Paul McCartney's baby. He kind of stepped into like the executive producer role of the band, and if you listen to the songs, you could tell it's his direction compared to Revolver, which was more John to me. Like that's how I compared it to. Like Revolver is a John album, Sergeant Pepper is a Paul album. But it's probably his best song on the album, and just all the conspiracy theories that go around Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. You know that some people consider it like a ode to LSD, but in reality is like that's I always say, like it's always heartbreak when you find out what the song's really about, because you had this idea and John's like, nah, my son was just drawing a painting and I asked him what it was and he said that's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. It's like, well, I guess guess that just boils down. Now to say that, you know, the psychedelic drugs wasn't in the studio and around while they were making this album, which was obvious, but the song was just inspired by his son painting. So I just thought it's just dope that he's just a great songwriter, and to take that and like, that sounds like a great song. Then to go into It's Getting Better, I just love that song. That's like one of those inspirational songs when I'm feeling down I could put on, like It's Getting Better, like got to admit it's getting better all the time. And like again, it's the counteracting, because like Paul was so happy on this album, and John, you could tell he was drifting into his, you know, his sorrows, for lack of better words. It's like it's getting better all the time, and John's in the background like it can't get no worse. I just think I think it's so fucking dope. And even as it being such an uplifting song, you get lines like I used to be cruel to my woman, I beat her and kept her apart from the things that she loved. Like and that was I just found out that was a John line he wrote in there, and he said in retrospect that was a line that, you know, that's just the way he was. He didn't know how to express his feelings, his thoughts at the time, so he would lash out against men and women, and that was strictly directed to his life, what he brought to the song. I was like, oh shit, I didn't know that, because to me, growing up and listening to it, I was like, damn, that's a harsh line to have, and got to admit it's getting better all the time. Like it kind of comes out the blue, but you know, and he also said that's why he was so focused on peace in his latter years, because he was such a, I guess for lack of better words, asshole growing up, and just a mean person to the ones around him. So yeah, Fixing the Hole, which is like one of my favorites on the album. I just love the way that Paul McCartney, his singing on there. Yeah, I just love his flow on that song, and even the way it starts off, like it starts off in this happy Paul McCartney way. That's why I said it's a Paul album. But I love the last verse where he sounds like exhausted with it, and he's like, "I'm taking my time for a number of things that wasn't important yesterday, and I still go." And then he, hey, and that guitar riff at the end is just dun 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 dun. That shit is just so fucking dope. And from an egotistical standpoint, for me, is listening to it is like I can relate to, and it really doesn't matter. When I'm wrong, I'm right. Where I belong, I'm right. Where I belong. And he's like, yeah, silly people wander around and worry me and wonder why they never get past my door. That was towards like fans who would stalk his house. So that's just a crazy line to throw in there. Like I'm fixing a hole. I'm fixing a hole where the rain gets in and stop my mind from wandering. Like that flow is just God level, and like it's so many meanings that you could take from that. It's one of the reasons why Paul McCartney is the writer he is. And around this time is where he really indulged in LSD. Like before then, like Revolver and Rubber Soul, he wouldn't partake. And, you know, John and George and Ringo, all of them would take it. And Paul McCartney was just like, no, I don't want to do that. But this album is the one he really indulged in. And you could tell, obviously, he came up with the concept album of Sgt. Pepper. And just the things that the way he was singing and his ideas he brought to the table, you could tell it was just a little bit more than, you know, regular Paul McCartney. It wasn't just love lullabies like you would get from Paul, like here, there, everywhere. It was more in-depth kind of things. Like Fixing the Hole is that was one of those ones. And then to go into She Leaving Home, Jesus Christ, that reminds me of It kind of gives me that Eleanor Rigby kind of feel, but a little bit deeper. Like just from a story standpoint, like it wasn't about nobody that he knew. It was from a story he read, I believe. Uh, it was like in a newspaper in 1967, and a 17-year-old girl like ran away from home to be with a boyfriend, and he took that idea and wrote this whole beautiful record around it, and it's just like it's just crazy. It's like Tupac making Brenda's got a baby because he read it in a newspaper. Like just how creative you could be. Like you never know the things that could spark your inspiration. And like if somewhere they got in contact with the girl for some reason, and she was like, "Damn, I just wish it wasn't like." I don't know, like bad. Like, she was like, I wish it didn't just come off as bad on my end. And it's also an artist by the name of Sharita, I believe. She was a Stevie Wonder artist, and she did a cover of this song, and it's just fucking amazing. So if you never heard that, She's Leaving Home by her, and Stevie Wonder produces it, but it's just fucking amazing. That one brings tears to my eyes. Like the one that she did brings tears to my eyes, and this song's been covered many times before. I remember hearing this for the first time. It's like, what the fuck is this? Like, and even the counteracting of Paul McCartney and John again. Like, I read that this was the album that brought them kind of back together as a writing team. Brought them back, and it was the last one. It brought them back as a writing team because, you know, as John and George were partaking in LSD and just acid and drugs of that nature, Paul McCartney, it kind of broke them away in a way from writing together, but this album brought them back together as a writing team, and you could tell just them together is just something magical that I don't think can be duplicated, especially with songs like She's Leaving Home, and then how Paul sings, and then John comes in behind him. We gave her most of our love is having, and they're like, it's just, we gave her everything, the money, goodbye, and like it's just amazing how they were doing that, and that had to come from just having endless time in the studio. Like like I said, it wasn't a tour band anymore. So them being the ultimate creative, they had no budget. Like Capitol gave them no budget. Like they were just in the studio from day to night, night to day, like just working on it. And sometimes that's probably why I was so bored of Ringo, because like, man, I play my drums. Like, I'm pretty much done, and they over there trying to get the vocals right or get the guitars right. It's just dope. The Benefit of Mr. Kite, which is, I think, is like what John Lennon would say, one of his gibberish throwaway records, because it's like a song that he literally wrote from a fucking circus flyer that he saw, like literally, and just sung it. Whatever they said, like right to left on the paper, he like really just sung it. And it's still so fucking dope. Like it's still one of those great songs on the album that if it wasn't on here, it probably wouldn't be the same. Like in the ending part, well, not the ending part, but the part it's before the third verse. That part always got me because I was like, damn, they did this in the 60s. How the fuck, what instruments is that? How did they do that? And then it's one of the few songs that I like better on the remastered version. Because if you have the version of the original that came out in the 60s, it's very low and you could hardly hear it. But as they did the remastered version, also, I think it's the Love album, where it was like the blend of all their songs. They really turned it up, and like it stands out a lot. But it's right before the third verse of this song, and it's just so fucking dope. Just the instrumentation that they did. It, like, again, other musicians had to be listening like, God damn it, what the we thought we had him with Pet Sounds. And then they just got better. Like, we can't compete with this shit. Like, it's easy for, let me just take a break. It's easy for bands to create something once and be great, but to keep doing it is a whole nother thing. And this is your 8th album. Like, you got to put that in perspective at a moment. Like, this is their 8th album. Like, some of your greats at their 8th album, you're not even listening to it. By the time you reach your 8th album, you're nowhere near your peak or prime. So for them to have their 8th album and made the biggest album in pop music is fucking nuts. Then that goes into Within You and Without You, and it's one of those. It's the only song written by George Harrison, which is crazy because he wrote 3 songs on the last album, Revolver, but he was growing apart from the band. He was like the youngest of the band. He was finding himself, and I heard that he didn't like really agree at the time with the whole recreating another band. It just wasn't where he was mentally at the time. But it's one of those introspective songs, And I love the line where he says, "We're talking about love that's gone cold, and people who gain the world but lose their souls. They don't know, they can't see. Are you one of them?" Kinda. That's the line. And I always think like he's talking about himself and the Beatles. Like I always think the Beatles give shots towards themselves in in the songs like all the time. When I'm 64 is one of those. I didn't know Paul McCartney wrote When I'm 64 at 16. Like he wrote that song at 16, and it was one of the songs they would do when they were just when they used to have on the all black leather, and they used to be in the clubs at a young age in Liverpool, and it started out as that, and him and John reworked it later. It took so long. That's probably like 10, 11 years, like how long that song lasted, which is freaking crazy. And it's also funny and ironic as hell that the big divorce that Paul McCartney went through, the one that like Big Boy said in International Players Anthem, he was 64. So that's like wild premonition and wild like, will you still love me? Will you still need me when I'm 64? And she's like, nope. I love the part on 64 where it's when the beat switches on the bridge and he says, you'll be older too. Like that part is just it's just so amazing that they were creating. I can't express it enough how great it was, that the stuff that they were creating at the time, and the fact that he made that when he was 16 is just even more better. Lovely Rita Mae, and which I say again, you could tell this is just a Paul McCartney album, just the way the songs are flowing and how many he's leading on. And there's so many speculations around that song about whether it was written about a meter maid named Meta Davis, and yeah, but overseas they don't call him. Well, he debunked that. He said like, no, meter maid was a slang in America. Like they don't use that overseas, and he was just taken back by that, saying that he wanted to make a song about it. And he was like, why would I make a song about a person giving me a ticket? Like I'm not that good. Like I wouldn't just, oh, you gave me a ticket, let me write a song about you. Like he was like, that's just not me. It was just, but probably the lady Meta Davis probably was like, I gave Paul McCartney a ticket and that song's about me. Get it, Meta Maid? He was like, nah, I just went to America and heard that, and I was taken back by that. It's one of those Beatles songs that really don't, I like it because it's one of those Beatles songs that really don't have a meaning, and a lot of my favorite Beatles songs don't have meaning, like Mean Mustard or Paul Dean Pam or Meter Maid. It's kind of Rita, Lovely Rita. Like it's those songs that really don't have a meaning behind them, but they're just so great. They're great records. And at the end when the beat drops out is my favorite part. And it's like a piano solo kind of thing, and Paul McCartney's singing and John singing behind. It's like, and they're not really singing. It's just like sounds. It'd be like it's like while the song is leading off, and he's like like it's just like, oh shit, this is fucking dope. And the piano's got this like soulful Motown swing going to it. It's just so fucking amazing, man. Like just the creative mindset they were in at the time. I'll save it for the ending of it. That goes into Good Morning, which is a John song, which you said was inspired by a Kellogg's cereal commercial. You could tell when he was just putting his inspiration. Right? He's like, poster, this Kellogg's commercial. I don't know. I don't even want to do this. It's probably one of the most jingled songs that you'll probably hear throughout the Beatles' whole tenured, or even now you'll probably hear good morning, yeah. Like that's, yeah. And even John says like, I got nothing to say, but it's okay. I ain't got nothing to talk about on this song, but it's about to be a smash because I'm John Lennon and I can just write about anything. Like it's like, again, it's one of those Lovely Rita songs. Like it ain't really got no meaning, but that's the creative part about it. Like it's still a great record. To go into the Sgt. Pepper reprise, and it kind of like closes the show. Like you open the show with the Sgt. Pepper, and then that's like the close of the show. Like, thank you all for coming out and things. And then it just seamlessly goes into A Day in the Life, which is probably the Beatles' best song ever. It's probably hard to find any. It's probably one of the best songs ever. Let alone the Beatles' best song. It's probably one of the best songs in music ever. Like just the whole thing. And then in the video, you got so many people in the video, like in the studio while they were recording it. You got like the Rolling Stones in there, and it got to suck for the Rolling Stones. I know Paul McCartney and John wrote for the Rolling Stones sometimes, but like, man, god damn it, like they killing it. Like, how we going? Like they got a whole 40-piece orchestra, and it was something they said for the climax part. They hired an orchestra of 40 musicians and dressed them in tuxedos and funny hats, and told them they had 24 bars to exceed from the lowest note on the instrument to the highest and get closest to an E major, which is like very Dewey Cox like. It's just like that's why it's so like dun, dun, like it gets it's just so fucking dope. The build up and then the climax of that, and just to tell me, yeah, you got 24 bars to do your high, go from your lowest to highest, and knock yourselves out. That's how you know that the Beatles was just in their bag and just they reached a point of rock star that there was no return. Like it was like this. We want a 40-piece orchestra. What you gonna have them play? I don't know. I just want them to go from the lowest to the highest note on their instrument possible, and they got 24 bars to do it. That's it. Like, all right. Lennon took the inspiration for the lyrics from a friend of theirs named Tara Brown. She was like the heir to the Guinness family fortune, like Guinness beer. And I guess she died in a fatal car accident at age 21. And he also got the ending 40 hoes line from a random newspaper article. Like he was literally grabbing inspiration from anything that was literally he could pick up, for lack of a better word. And that song is also a perfect balance of again of John and McCartney. Just John says he had the darkness. I read the news today. Oh boy, he had that part, and he couldn't think of anything else for the bridge, I guess. And Paul McCartney had this upbeat dun dun. Woke up, jump out of bed, grab the comb off my head. Like he had that part, and they just put it in the middle of it, and it came out to be one of the greatest pieces of music ever. Like just think of that. How like I love when music just tells a story. Like period. Like, and it doesn't have to be like Eleanor Rigby kind of story. It could just be like the music itself is telling a story. So you mean like they do, I would love to turn you on. And they wouldn't, BBC banned that song from the radio. Just a side note, they banned that song from the radio at the time because they thought they were going to get kids to start doing drugs more. And John Lennon was like, that's not even about drugs. It was more about love. And like, but back to just the climax, to start out with this dark sounding, dark blue kind of sound, right? And you get the climax of the orchestra and all these instruments, and then it just like wipes away, and then it goes into a piano, just happy piano that's orange, and it's like dun dun dun. I woke up, fell out of bed, like it's just whoa. And then the way Paul McCartney ends it is like it's like a wash away, and then they do the burn, 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 dump. I read the news today, and this just fall right back into it. It's like, what the fuck am I listening to right now? I know I was fucked up in '08 listening to this, so imagine what they were thinking in off the vinyl record player, and it's your first time hearing it in the '60s. Like, wait, what? When the song first switched, did they go, wait, did the song change? And then to bring up back that climax of orchestra again. Man, it's one of the best pieces of music I ever heard in my life. That song in particular, the best Beatles song of all time. Is not a Beatles song better than that. All right, let's get into best songs. I'm gonna go with A Day in the Life, She's Leaving Home, and Lucy in the Sky. Worst song, I'm gonna just go with But Then You and Without You. There's nothing wrong with that song. It's just probably the least song I listen. What's that? Did I say that right? I listen to the least. It's the song I listen to the least. Best line. And this is ironic because the best line is from my worst song. Hey, I'm human. I could do that. We were talking about the love we all could share. When we find it, to try our best to hold it there. With our love, we could save the world if they only knew. And I'm like, yeah, that's the best line. George Harrison always come through with the introspective great lines about love. To close it, though, Sgt. Pepper, greatest album probably of all time. It's one of the albums that everybody should be inspired from. It changed music forever. it shunned and hushed all the doubters of the Beatles at the time because it was so many. The media was coming after them and saying like the Beatles are done, they're breaking up. When they put out Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane on A and B side, it was the first like in years that a Beatles single didn't go number one, and that was like to I would say media and it wasn't bloggers back then, but just to media back then, they thought that was a failure. And it was like, oh, their run is over. The Beatles are done. And their manager, Brian, he said that was the worst mistake he ever done because they like pressured them to put that out. Like they were recording music for the album. And they was like, we need a record for a single. And, they just put out Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane, which is ridiculous because it's probably two of the best records of the Beatles catalog, period. But if they had those records on the album, like of Sgt. Pepper, Jesus, it would have just been sensory overload. If Strawberry Fields Forever was on Sgt. Pepper and not like Yellow Submarine, like it would have been overload. Like it would have just been too much. But this album, one of the greatest albums of all time, if not. Like they have to, when they do these reviews about like albums, and they have to keep changing it because if they don't, Sgt. Pepper would just be number one all the time. Like it went from number 1 to number 20 to number 100. Like they keep having to push it back all the time because you can really just leave it there. Like it's nothing that's coming close to the shit that they put into this album. And if you think about it, the stuff that they had to make it on a 4-track is just insane. Like you can't even, just 4 singers and musicians and a 4-track was making this with just unlimited amount of studio time. And to me, also, it's the Beatles' happiest album. Like it's their most fun album to me, even though they probably weren't on the same page all the time and things of that nature. This was their most fun album. Like you can hear from top to bottom, and that probably just came from the idea of not being the Beatles while we were recording it. Like we could go in any direction we want to go into. We could try anything we wanted to, and that started with Rubber Soul and Revolver. But Sgt. Pepper, it broke out the fucking earth. Like they went into space. Like it was no return after that. That's why I think with the White Album they had to just like decompress, and it was a totally different vibe because it was no more. They went to the pinnacle of experimentation. Like it was no more that we could do. Like we can only, for lack of better words, digress, and not in a bad way. We did it, and it was their 8th album. Like how I can't like stress that more than I can, but like it was their 8th album. That's unheard of to me. So I gotta give it all the respect that it desires. It's one of my favorite albums. I'm glad I have it in my collection. What do you think? What do you rank Sgt. Pepper in your favorite Beatles albums? Do you have any information or Easter eggs that I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm Tatum. This is the Beatles Sgt. Pepper. It's time to put this record back on my wall.